6:04, good morning. Happy Friday. It is great to have you here on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. We are streaming on the always free KCMO Talk Radio app. You know, we have now been following President Donald Trump for basically a decade in the political arena. And there have been many times over the last 10 years when I have felt like maybe he's not the best guy for the job, despite voting for him 3 times. Sometimes I feel like he's gotten distracted. Sometimes he's cared about things that really don't matter. But Donald Trump is like the person who steps up to the plate when the most consequential things are on the line. Trump is like the guy who plays his best when it's Game 7 of the World Series, or it's the Super Bowl. He may not care about week 1. He may not care about the games in April and May if he's a Major League Baseball player, but you know this guy in crunch time is going to be there for you. And when the stakes are the highest, he's playing his best. And that's exactly what we're watching play out right now when it comes to the ongoing situation with Iran. So yesterday, Karoline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, ends up announcing that we are heading down the home stretch here of what is going to be a 2-week window to determine what exactly the United States is going to do when it comes to Iran, the nuclear capabilities, and potentially working with Israel to put an end to Iran's nuclear capabilities. Here was Karoline Leavitt yesterday from the White House podium.
Regarding the ongoing situation in Iran, I know there has been a lot of speculation amongst all of you in the media regarding the president's decision-making and whether or not the United States will be directly involved. In light of that news, I have a message directly from the president, and I quote, "Based on the fact that there's a substantial chance of negotiations that may or may not take place with Iran in the near future, I will make my decision whether or not to go within the next 2 weeks." That's a quote directly from the president for all of you today.
So Trump's basically saying here, we've got a couple weeks to figure this thing out. Now, there are still ongoing conversations between these two sides. All right, that was also, I think, a buried part of yesterday's press conference by Karoline Leavitt when she said, hey, these talks are still going on.
As for correspondence between the United States and the Iranians, I can confirm that correspondence has continued. As you know, we were engaged with 6 rounds of negotiations with them in both indirect and direct ways.
So this is way more complex. Trump's just not sitting around like twiddling his thumbs, being like, do we want to bomb them? Do we not want to bomb them? What do we do here? What kind of mood am I in? How are my gold iPhones doing? It's like, no, this is an ongoing conversation. Do I think that's a hard 2 weeks, by the way? No, I don't. I wouldn't screw with that deadline of 2 weeks, though. I wouldn't. Because remember, Israel attacked Iran on day 61. After Trump said, you guys have 60 days to negotiate. Day 61 was the day last week when Israel attacked a lot of Iran's nuclear plants. So I wouldn't take my chances if I was the supreme leader in Iran. I would be like, all right, this 2-week number, maybe it's not a hard 2 weeks, but I'm pretty sure I wouldn't be screwing around after what just happened to my country last Thursday night into Friday morning, right? So that right there is enough for Trump to have the gravitas and to have the respect from all these bad actors on the world stage to be like, this guy is trying to get some peace around the world. He is, right? Whether it's Ukraine and Russia, whether it's trying to come to some conclusion with China, notably on trade, but there are much bigger conversations to be had there. He is trying in a way that his predecessor did not, or was just incapable of doing, to draw some of these major global conflicts to an end. And Trump has been wildly consistent on basically all of these countries. He was one of the first ones in American politics to call China what they are, which is a threat to the United States of America. He has been very early in saying Iran cannot get a nuclear weapon, going back to 2012 when he was not even being talked about as a political figure, right? He has criticized the Iraq War for years now. So this notion that so many, frankly, to Donald Trump's right, are throwing out there of, man, I don't know, Trump, he's just going to draw us into another endless war. There's no evidence to suggest Donald Trump has any interest in that. None. So what makes you think that Donald Trump, who, whether you agree or disagree with his principles, is a guy who's suddenly going to basically totally do an about-face, do a 180, and throw away everything he's believed for the last couple of decades to what? Go to war with Iran? Mano a mano? There's nothing to suggest that he has the appetite for it. But that is a lot of the fear-mongering that has been thrown out there by some in Donald Trump's MAGA inner circle, and frankly, those that are to his right. It's in many ways kind of like the Vietnam syndrome, just like it is the Iraq syndrome. Somehow every U.S. intervention is going to turn into a quagmire of nation building or some type of long-term catastrophe where thousands of American troops are going to be put in harm's way. That would be political suicide for this president. He's not going to have any appetite for it. This is not like Lindsey Graham running the show. This is not John Bolton. It's none of these guys. I mean, yeah, are there guys and gals in the Republican Party that really are interested in these forever wars? Yeah, I don't deny that those people exist. I don't. They're on the right and they're on the left. So I understand being very cautious when it comes to some of these people and what their intentions really are and why they would have those intentions, whether it's because of lobbyists, buddies in D.C., the money pit that becomes these wars. A lot of people get rich off of them. I understand, and I think many of us understand, that we have to proceed with caution. But at the same time, Donald Trump has been wildly consistent on making sure that Iran does not have nuclear capabilities. And I don't know about you, but when the guys who are running the country enjoy chanting death to America, I kind of want to make sure those guys don't have a nuke. Call me crazy, but the guys who chant around the globe death to America, they're not the ones that I'm like, if they get a nuke, we just got to protect our borders. Make sure that, we're checking the entry points of the country and the ports and whatnot. Those aren't my guys.
He's a nut job.
Yeah, exactly. The Ayatollah and company, total nut jobs, total whack jobs, and making sure they don't have nuclear capabilities is wildly important. And I know some will say, well, what about the WMDs from Iraq? Okay, well, when J.D. Vance, one of the most isolationist people in the Republican Party, also happens to be the VP, when he is citing the International Atomic Energy Agency, and he is saying on social media that they're the ones who have documented the facts that Iran could be or is likely on the verge of having major nuclear capabilities, I will take J.D. Vance at his word here. Because J.D. was frankly one of the faces of the isolationist right for several years. And J.D. is now the one who on social media the other day, and we shared this on X at Pete Mundo, was citing the International Atomic Energy Agency's documents, saying these guys are darn close. Does anybody really think that Iran would hold off and not develop the nuclear capabilities that they potentially are on the verge of getting to be good guys on the world stage? That would be insane. They've been on this mission and they have really waged this war against the West for the better part of 45, 50 years at this point, right? Why would they suddenly stop now? 913-408-7957. So this is obviously a story and a situation that we are going to be monitoring closely. On the text line, Pete, 2 more weeks also gives them more time to use up more of their weapons, and they would have less to use on us if Trump does move ahead with his plan. That's true. That's a very good point as well. There is a large belief that Iran is running short already on its missiles and on its weaponry. 913-408-7957. Our studio line and our text line on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. And we are streaming, as always, on the KCMO Talk Radio app. Coming up, there was a big lawsuit filed in Kansas City yesterday tied to one of the biggest news stories we've seen in the last couple of years in this town. We'll tell you about it coming up next. Lisa Lopez Galvan, the name will always be associated with one of the more tragic moments and, frankly, embarrassing moments in Kansas City history, and that was the shooting at the Super Bowl parade about a year and a half ago. Lisa Lopez Galvan's family is now suing Kansas City and other defendants, including event organizers and gun sellers, over the shooting that happened at the rally, calling her death a preventable tragedy. Lopez Galvan, along with her husband, Michael, and their children, traveled to downtown Kansas City to celebrate the Chiefs' Super Bowl victory February 14th of 2024. Of course, we know what happened. Gunfire erupted at the end of the rally. 24 people were hit, including Lopez Galvan and her son. The 43-year-old mother died in the shooting. The family is contending in a lawsuit filed on Wednesday in Jackson County Circuit Court that this was a preventable strategy. Now, I understand the litigious nature of what we currently reside in. Everybody is looking to sue everybody. And it's sad. I mean, it's the reason that, frankly, one of the more underreported parts of inflation the last few years has been insurance costs, car insurance, homeowners insurance. And that's partially because these companies are paying out more than they ever have. We've got way, way, way too many attorneys, at least in the world of trip and fall attorneys. I'll just leave it at that. I'll be polite today. It's a Friday. I'm in a good mood. I'm happy. Hopefully you are as well. Mark's dragging butt in here, 2 a.m. flight. He landed back in Kansas City with 3 little kids. So
that's right.
You feeling good?
I'm feeling all right.
All right, good.
My mom's not feeling all right with those insurance prices, though. She was telling me doubled the price.
On homeowners or car?
Both.
Yeah. It's bad. I mean, just check it. Like many of us, my homeowner's insurance just gets kind of bundled into the mortgage payment. But when you actually look at how much your homeowner's insurance has gone up and your car insurance the last few years, it is one of the more underreported parts of inflation in this country. And part of that's because everyone's looking to sue, and these companies are too busy paying out a lot of this nonsense because, frankly, it's easier for them to give somebody a payment and a settlement than take this stuff to court. They save money doing it, but there still is massive cost associated with it. So you've got a lot of these attorneys out there who are willing to basically sue anybody over anything. And listen, who wouldn't say, yeah, I'll take a free buck? I'm not alleging that's the motivation for the Lopez Galvan family. I am beyond sympathetic as to what this family has gone through. They've lost a wife, they've lost a mother, and it was because of an absolute tragedy. But there's also a fine line here to say we're going to go after gun sellers, we're going to go after the city of Kansas City. And you know me, I'm not looking to sit here and give the city of Kansas City the benefit of the doubt. But the city of Kansas City, Missouri, had like 800 cops there that day. Okay, there was no checkpoint. It wasn't like being at Arrowhead where you walk through, metal detectors and things like that. But I believe this city had been wildly responsible in how they had tried to put on these parades the last several years. And I hope that Kansas City in some part is willing to fight this. Not because I don't want to see the Lopez Galvan family get, some type of closure based on what happened. But you're telling me that we're going to sue the city, we're going to sue gun sellers. That's the way that this is going to go. Event organizers as well, but nothing around those who actually end up pulling the trigger. Well, there's no money there, obviously. Let's be honest. These are mostly poor people from urban Kansas City. But if we're going to point the finger at everybody who set up the event, right? Everybody involved, the city, the organizers, gun sellers, there's a very obvious party that is missing here. And ask yourself why. No money. It's really as simple as that. The people that get sued in life are those who actually can settle and have money to pay out people that are suing them. You might say that that's too pessimistic. Maybe it's too simplistic, but it's also true, right? Like, it's just true. And that's why I'm looking at the story and I struggle with it because I don't want to inherently be the person sitting here behind a microphone sounding unsympathetic to a family that has lost a mother and a wife. But I also can't sit here and just let my sympathy for the family slide when it comes to who they're suing and what they're alleging against Kansas City and the organizers of the Super Bowl parade and the gun sellers who sold the guns to the kids who ended up firing those guns at the Super Bowl parade. John, I just can't get myself there.
Well, I'm with you, and I don't want to leave you alone out there. I'm questioning the timing. I would have expected this sooner.
Well, yeah.
I suppose. So what took so long? I don't know. I'm questioning what took so long. So I would have thought this would have come sooner.
Yeah, I agree. So prosecutors have filed criminal charges against Dominic Miller, Lindell Mays, Terry Young, and 3 youths following the shooting. The lawsuit names them as defendants, saying they discharged their firearms with the intent to injure, maim, or kill. Also charged, Fado Manning, Ronell Williams Jr., and Chanel Groves in connection with guns that were used in the shooting, and those 3 men are also named as defendants in the civil lawsuit. Although they were not among the shooters, the charges allege the men were involved in illegal straw purchases and trafficking of firearms, including purchasing 2 guns found outside Union Station following the shooting. How far back do you want to track this? Like, this is also, do you not open up the door to suing the gun manufacturers? How far back with this thing do you go? You could keep it going. I don't think it's good for anybody, but at the same time, I understand we're in a world where everybody is trying to get their settlement on a lawsuit. And I just can't get myself on board with this. I want to be, and I am sympathetic to the family, but on this lawsuit, I'm just not on board with it because I think it opens up a world where cities and municipalities say we can't afford to put on any event. We just can't do it. The risk is not worth the reward, and that is not going to be good for Kansas City or any other community for that matter. Coming up next on KCMO, the Royals are pushing back on something they desperately need to push back on. Well, that felt good yesterday. Mark was texting from the plane. He's like, hey, did the Royals sweep the Rangers? He was texting Keatsman and myself, and we said, yep, we got you, buddy. Mark was too cheap to buy the Wi-Fi. Don't worry, Mark, I am as well. I don't pay for the Wi-Fi on the plane. But you were on Southwest, so you at least get to text for free, right?
That's right. And it was the 7th inning when we got on the plane, so they were up 3-1 last I had seen before you guys let me know.
Very nice. And your man, Jack Caglione, finally goes deep, buddy.
Not once, but twice.
That's a welcome back, Mark Van Sickle, after a few days away celebrating his nephew's high school graduation on the left coast. So we'll get into more of that throughout the morning. But the Royals needed that desperately. Now, they're still a ways back in the division because the Tigers are suddenly the 27 Yankees. I don't know what the heck got into Detroit.
Up there, huh?
It's so weird. I don't think anybody expected
that. Well, that goes back since last year. They've been hot for a while.
Yeah, they have been. So they're sitting there right now, and they're 10.5 games back in the division after the sweep yesterday. And I'm not doing this to make this a sports show. There's a broader conversation here around the stadiums I'll get to here in a second. I promise you, it's coming. It's coming. So right now in the wild card, though, they're only a game and a half back in the wild card.
Mm-hmm.
So they're right in the thick of the playoff race.
They're a game below 500. They win today. They're 5th in a row. They get to 500 again.
Yeah, 37-38 on the season. So they're right in the hunt for the postseason. Yep. It's early. But there were reports this week that the Royals were going to be sellers ahead of the trade deadline next month. And J.J. Piccolo, the general manager for the Royals, said that is unequivocally false. And he blasted any reports that they're going to be sellers ahead of the trade deadline. So I'm glad he said that, and he had to say that. And the reason he had to say that is because the Royals are still navigating this stadium deal. They have no choice but to stay competitive and not look like they're selling the 2025 season ahead of July when they might be on the verge of asking taxpayers once again for hundreds of millions of dollars for a new stadium. Now, we know that they've got this deal now with the state of Missouri. We're 10 days down until the deadline here where the Kansas Star Bond offer is set to expire. God willing, the politicians in Topeka will not extend the Star Bond offer beyond June 30th, 10 days from now. I mean, that is, if I could wish for one thing in our local news cycle right now, no ifs, ands, or buts, June 30th being the official end of the offer for Star Bonds in Kansas is the thing I want more than anything right now in Kansas City news. Because then we will know which side of state line the Royals and Chiefs are going to be on. If Kansas does not extend its Star Bond offer beyond June 30th, then we basically know these teams are staying in Missouri, right? It doesn't mean we know exactly where they're going. Well, we know the Chiefs are staying at Arrowhead then. We may not know where the Royals are going. They could look up north to Clay County, North Kansas City, or they could look to downtown KC-Mo. Those will be the two finalists, basically, for the Royals. But if the legislators in Topeka are like, you know what, let's give these guys another few weeks, they're going to be like, no, don't.
How dare you?
No, don't do it. Where's my Greta Thunberg? No, how dare you do this to us? This needs to end, and it needs to end sooner rather than later. But the Royals cannot be sellers this year as they potentially, one, made the playoffs last year, and then two, potentially look to ask the taxpayer for more money. Because one of the big things that people used against the Royals last year when that Jackson County 3.8 sales tax bombed out was, the team stinks anyway. They don't invest in the product. And then, of course, they go on to make the playoffs last year. So that at least took that talking point away from those who didn't want to fund anything for the stadiums and the teams. Getting to the postseason is good for the Royals. That helps them. Let's be honest. When your team is winning, there's a feel-good mentality that ensues amongst fans and amongst residents. And they say, you know what? These guys are in the playoffs. We love these guys. It's why the Chiefs desperately want the stadium deal done now because they keep going to Super Bowls. The timing is perfect for them. They love it.
Exactly to your points locally on the sports scene. It's just that kind of lazy journalism as we come to a period, the All-Star break, where we're going to start deciding who's doing what and just cast the 30,000-foot view. Oh, the Royals suck. They're selling. No, we're not.
No.
Nope. Matter of fact, we're on the ascendance.
Yes.
We just need some outfields.
And Jack is knocking through home runs now. He had 2 yesterday, Jack Caglione. So they've got to basically lean into that and say, no, we are in the thick of the playoff race. They're 10.5 back in the division, but they're right in the wild card race. And they have to double down on this. We are a competitive team and a competitive franchise thing based on what's happening here with the stadium. John Sherman cannot be a seller. He literally can't afford to be a seller right now. So he's got to be all in. And that's why when I saw the report that the Royals might be sellers, I said, no, that's political suicide for them. They cannot do that right now. They can't afford to do that right now. If they do go down that road, there's going to be a lot of backlash from people who are going to say, and you guys want more money from us locally? Fat freaking chance. That ain't happening. But they might be able to do it, of course, without the public involvement, or at least the public vote. And that's where I think Quentin Lucas is at today, the mayor of Kansas City. But the mayor did also note yesterday, any thoughts of 18th and Vine? Not happening. That is something that Ollie Gates of course, Gates Barbecue fame, was floating out to Channel 5. 2 days ago, Channel 5 had this report of, hey, you know what? We may try to get the Royals down to 18th and Vine area, which, as John and I were talking about yesterday, actually makes sense to try to highlight the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. It's an underappreciated crown jewel if you're a baseball fan, if you're a historian in Kansas City. I know we think it gets a lot of attention, but I'll give you a great example. I'm a diehard baseball fan. Before I got here 7+ years ago now, I had no idea that deal was right there in Kansas City.
Right.
I didn't have a clue. And then I go to it, and I'm like, this is awesome. It's great. So in a perfect world, you would tie in the Negro Leagues Museum to some new Royals baseball stadium. But it's not going to happen for a multitude of reasons.
Right, and it's kind of typical of this town. It's a good idea, but the timing it's like, wait a minute, we should have been maybe working towards this 5 years ago. We do things where we stick on another level to Kemper Arena instead of going ahead and building what became Sprint Center. That could have been started 10 years earlier. So we kind of do things like this, and it's like it's a great idea, but that's what gets people frustrated. They have a good idea, but then the implementation's just all out of whack.
Exactly.
It frustrates people.
And Ollie Gates is like 2 years late to the party, with all due respect. And Quentin Lucas, he loves
anybody else, really, right?
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. So Quentin Lucas, I asked him about this yesterday, the Royals going down to the 18th and Vine area, and he basically said it's not happening in a very, very political way because he loves Ollie Gates and Gates Barbecue.
I love Ollie. I have probably eaten like 3,000 pounds of his food in my lifetime.
What a politician. 3,000 pounds of food. Oh, come on. Not even 300, please.
So, and I have loved his impact and influence on redevelopment of 18th and Vine and the eastern 18th Street corridor. Here's the challenge, right? And actually the television story, which isn't always surprising, but got a bit of it wrong. And they said the former KCATA headquarters. No, that's the current. That is where the buses park. That's where the ATA is. So you have them. And then you also have the Kansas City School District, which owns a huge parcel of land right there. And so, look, it could be doable. Of course, what you would have to do, though, is then negotiate with 2 additional government organizations.
Listen to Quentin Lucas there. It could be doable. It's like when your spouse says to you, hey, can we redo the bathroom? Now, you can with the Plumbing Pro. They've got a great deal out there right now. But you start hemming and hawing and you kind of make the case as to why you can't without saying no, right? That's what Quentin Lucas is doing there. Doesn't want to insult Ollie Gates, doesn't want to insult 18th and Vine. But the reality is this. If the Royals stay on the Missouri side, there are 2 locations, Washington Square Park or North Kansas City. That's it. And Ollie Gates and Emmanuel Cleaver and other folks can talk about 18th and Vine, but it's not going to happen. And Quentin Lucas, in a very political way yesterday, confirmed that on this show. Can I say that both sides may have screwed up on this one? Am I allowed to say that? 7:05, good morning, happy Friday. It is great to have you here on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. So yesterday I saw the post on X that many of you may have ended up seeing, and that is that ICE agents, according to the LA Dodgers social media feed, came to Dodger Stadium and requested permission to access the parking lots. The Dodgers reported on X that the ICE agents were denied entry to the grounds by the organization. Tonight's game will be played as scheduled. So the Dodgers made a big deal of this. The Dodgers did not have to blow up ICE's spot on social media. They made that decision. And it was a bad decision because this could have happened and nobody could have known about it. And it would have been like, hey, can we use your facilities? Can we come in? And Dodgers say no, which, by the way, they're allowed to do. I mean, unless you have the warrant, right? The Dodgers, as a private business, let's be fair, do not have to allow somebody in unless that somebody, i.e. ICE, has the proper paperwork. But then to go on social media and fan the flames of the issue, which is what the Dodgers did, that is so irresponsible and completely unnecessary. I mean, they're acting like ICE was coming in to ship Ohtani back to Japan so he couldn't hit a couple of home runs last night or something. I mean, what's the point of this? Or like ICE was going to be walking through tailgates in Dodger Stadium parking lot and being like, hey, you here legally there, young man? Get over here with that beer. Is that an open container I see? You here legally or not? Like, come on. That wasn't going to happen either. I mean, the Dodgers acting like they're protecting all their illegal immigrant fans. Don't worry, come to the game tonight. Like, hey, if I had a ticket to the game last night at Dodger Stadium, I wouldn't really have been worried anyway. And most 99.9% of people would not have been worried because if you were here legally, why would ICE be looking for you in the parking lot of a Dodgers game? But where ICE made a mistake here is by incorporating the Dodgers in anything and giving this sports franchise, and frankly, any franchise with this kind of platform, the benefit of the doubt. So the Dodgers claimed yesterday that they denied ICE access to the parking lots at Dodger Stadium. Now, what happened here is ICE responded, saying this had nothing to do with the Dodgers. They write here, CBP, Customs and Border Protection vehicles, were in the stadium parking lot very briefly, unrelated to any operation or enforcement. So what happened here? CNN reports that U.S. Customs and Border Protection vehicles were in a nearby parking lot on or near the grounds of the stadium. And one of them had a car malfunction that caused them to stay longer, according to a CBP official who maintained there were no operations related to the Major League Baseball club. CNN adds here there had been an influx of CBP agents in the L.A. area on the heels of the protests against President Trump's immigration and enforcement agenda. The Department of Homeland Security surged agency personnel to the region, including border agents, to respond to those protests, and many have remained in the area. But CBP made it clear in a statement that this had nothing to do with the Dodgers. CBP vehicles were in the stadium parking lot very briefly and unrelated to any operation or enforcement. So if that's the case, I'm just sitting back and saying, guys, you know I got your back there. You know I got your back. But you got to be a little smarter when dealing with somebody like the Dodgers, who has made it clear they would love to blow up your spot. I mean, all these major businesses and a lot of these sports franchises have all put out these big social media posts pushing back on the administration. We've seen that the last couple of weeks. Now, if this were to happen here in Kansas City, I'm pretty sure the Royals wouldn't do that. I mean, I wouldn't put anything past them, but I don't think the Royals would take this approach. Plus, even if you're illegal, you want to hide out in Truman Sports Complex, that's probably not the best place to be hanging out when there's not a game going on. There's a lot better places to hang out than the Truman Sports Complex. But either way, you've got to look at it and say to yourself, ICE needs to think 2 steps ahead on this. They've just got to take a step back, take a deep breath, and think about the optics here too. And that's something that I believe got overlooked on this very issue, John.
Well, and I would think it would be a matter of economics. I'm not sure if it's a wise expenditure of money. Don't the Dodgers fans come in the 3rd inning and leave by the 6th? So how many do you catch anyway?
Yeah, that's true, man.
Right.
Well done. They're in late and they're out early.
Yeah.
That's just how it goes. So the other thing I wanted to note here on ICE is that this story from Breitbart shares here that ICE agents are now facing a 500% increase in assaults. Well, first off, that's because they're actually allowed to do their job now, right? I mean, for the last 4 years, they couldn't really do their job. And now they're doing their job, but they're obviously dealing with pushback and blowback. And Breitbart reports here that Department of Homeland Security data exclusively obtained by Breitbart shows that ICE agents are now facing a 500% increase in assaults as they attempt to locate and arrest illegal aliens living in the United States. That's a bad number, but like anything else, when these people have not been allowed to be proactive in their jobs, you are going to see that increase no matter what, right? And that's sad to come to the obvious conclusion on, but it's also true. This is how this was going to go. The question is, we talk about bringing the temperature down, and you can easily make the case that obviously both sides have a responsibility in doing that. But this is the kind of data that should be blasted all over the internet and all over media, because you do have ICE agents who are just doing the jobs that they have been hired to do. Regardless of what you feel about it, these people have been hired to do a job. They are legally allowed to do that job. And now that job is 5 times as dangerous as it was a year ago because of the sentiment that is out there. And that's something that when we talk about violence in America and political violence in America, this needs to be part of the conversation. It's got to be. So I'll share this on social media because I just stumbled upon the stories and I'm like, wait, what? And we knew that they were obviously facing more dangerous situations, but a 500% increase? That is totally inexcusable. And we talk about what happened in Minnesota last week with these poor politicians, right? We talk about that level of political violence. Well, ICE agents being attacked at a 500% higher rate, that's also dangerous political violence that needs to be addressed. Now, in the lighter baseball note, Jack Caglione hit his first home run of his career. Big stud Royals prospect, Royals sweep the Rangers yesterday as we talk about baseball. Did you see this little advanced analytic tidbit on Jack Caglione's first home run of his career yesterday? The pitch was 4.22 feet above the ground. That is the second highest pitch that anyone has hit a home run off of this year. You see that there, Mark?
I didn't see the stat, but I saw that it was a high fastball, and he can get a hold of any pitch.
Well, since they started tracking this data, like how high the pitch is off the plate, this is the highest pitch that a Royals player has hit a home run off of since they started tracking this back in 2008. So that first home run, I mean, it was way out of the strike zone. It was way up there.
That was super high.
And to turn around and have the bat speed and the power to hit that one over the right field wall, like stud rookie Jack Caglione did yesterday. I'll tell you what, he's an American citizen, but if he wasn't, ICE agents ain't screwing with him after that kind of power that he showed yesterday on his first career home run. I mean, you got to have some juice to get that ball over the right field fence in the way that he did yesterday.
He was actually getting respect from some guys in the Dallas airport. They saw me in my Royals gear, and they're like, man, that Jack Caglione guy.
Oh, really?
Good. Yep.
Oh, man. There you go, Mark. Oh, boy. You must have been on cloud 9 yesterday, buddy.
I was excited about that.
Oh, man, look at that. Good for you. Made Mark's week. Good to have you back, my man. Well, as we sit here on a Friday morning, we are monitoring, of course, the situation in Iran. We learned yesterday from the White House that they are about 2 weeks out from making a decision as to whether or not they will be involved in the strikes against Iranian nuclear sites. And I think that is a very loose 2 weeks. I think that Trump just threw out a number that he liked yesterday and told Caroline Leavitt to go ahead with 2 weeks because, as Trump has noted, he's not going to signal anything that he is going to do here as commander-in-chief, John, and nor should he be signaling any of this.
Right. Well, I wonder if the taco crowd's getting all giddy.
Oh, they are.
Running their little clock.
Oh, they are, John. This is the headline on Drudge Report, which, of course, Drudge has just gone completely left. Trump tacos for 2 weeks. That is the Trump always chickens out moniker for those who don't know. So this is like
world
such a
annihilation. He chickened out on world annihilation.
Yeah, exactly. Right? And then if he had attacked Iran the other day, let's say, they'd be like, Trump sparks World War III.
Trying to take over, dictator, taking over the world.
It's just, I mean, it's so predictable from some of these outlets. But you did have this yesterday. Josh Hawley, Missouri U.S. Senator, talking to CNN. And Josh Hawley, listen, we know that he's kind of more in line with some of the isolationists in the Republican Party. And here's the thing. I think the isolationists generally are wrong. I also think that the Lindsey Grahams and the warmongers are wrong. I think both extreme factions of the Republican Party on foreign policy are wrong. I think Trump is actually in the middle on this issue based on where the Republican Party is at. And he's the one who is actually navigating this in the most responsible way. And I know even people that love Trump may not always admit that when it comes to the word responsible, it's not usually connected with the president at the hip. We all understand that. But on this specific issue, foreign policy in general, he has navigated that isolationist wing of the party with the more warmongering wing of the party very effectively. And it worked very well during Trump 1.0. And thus far, I think he deserves the benefit of the doubt during 2.0. So here's what Missouri U.S. Senator Josh Hawley told CNN yesterday.
It's a very different thing, though, for us to then say, but we are going to affirmatively go strike Iran or insert ourselves in the conflict. That to me that's a whole different matter. I'd be real concerned about. But I don't think there's a need for us, the United States, to affirmatively insert ourselves. I mean, I think that is a whole different kettle of fish.
So that is Josh Hawley in a very soft way criticizing the president. That's what that is. Now, Josh Hawley's had an interesting couple of weeks here, right? I mean, last week he was giving exclusives to CBS News, and he was saying $15 an hour minimum wage. Let's go, baby. Woo! Yeah, where's my boy Bernie Sanders? Now he's trying to navigate this Iran versus Israel deal by saying, well, if we insert ourselves, is that the most responsible decision? Well, here's the thing. This notion that if we just sit back and do nothing, these people might not chant death to America. Come on. They've been doing this for decades. They're not going to chant death to America less if we don't do anything. On the other hand, if, as J.D. Vance, who is one of the flag bearers of the isolationist wing of the Republican Party, if J.D. Vance is saying on social media, as he was this week, that, listen, these guys in Iran, they've got the capabilities and the capacity to put together a nuclear weapon, and we need to take that threat seriously. If J.D. Vance is saying that based on the information that he has, then I am more than willing to give him the benefit of the doubt and take J.D. Vance at his word, because he is not somebody who has, frankly, any interest in going down the road of having any involvement overseas. None whatsoever. 913-408-7957 is how you join us on KCMO Talk Radio. But when you hear Josh Hawley say that, are you like, rah, Josh, go get a Missouri U.S. Senator? Or are you saying to yourself, hold on here, pump the brakes. Josh Hawley's got to get on board with what the administration is doing, allow them to do their thing, and frankly, take the leader of the party, who has been very cautious and very responsible when it comes to any kind of overseas involvement, at his word. 913-408-7957. Let's go to Victor. He's in Parkville. What's up, Victor? How are you?
Oh, good morning. You know, this is really starting to irritate the hell out of me. I mean, what is he doing? Trying to lock up the St. Louis vote? Because a lot of the people that I know out here, the conservatives, they're getting really irritated with his stances on things, his social policies, like you said, whether it was the minimum wage or the no Medicaid thing when we're trying to make cuts and try to get rid of fraud. And now he's taking a peacenik thing on this. I get news for you, Josh. We're already inserted. We've been inserted in this since 1979, since the hostages were taken. And, you know, I know that everybody's all, well, they're taking away their ballistic missile capability, yada, yada. Well, okay, what if they just put one on a boat and then float it right into Boston Harbor? What do you think that's going to do?
Yeah.
Or down in Galveston or San Pedro. I mean, they don't need to shoot a missile. And it's if in the middle of the ocean, nobody's going to go out there with a Geiger counter. I mean, come on, people. Let's be real here. These people have hated our guts for a long, long time. And just like the 9/11 committee
Victor,
said,
don't you think there's Josh Hawley's approach is more like Barack Obama in many ways? It's this Obama thing of like, well, we don't want to insert ourselves because we don't want to escalate things. They chant death to America. I mean, it doesn't mean we want troops on the ground in any way, shape, or form. It doesn't mean we want Lindsey Graham, to get all excited, literally and figuratively, about some next conflict overseas. But my goodness.
I don't think Donald Trump wants to put boots on the ground.
No.
We have enough air capability to do it. But I will go all the way back to the end of the Iraq War, and I blame George W. Bush. We had 100,000 troops and all the material there. We had all the evidence we needed that Iran was inserting themselves into Baghdad and into the insurgency in Iraq. We just should have pivoted and marched on to Tehran when we were there.
Thank
That's
you.
just my opinion.
Yeah, have a great weekend, Victor. That is well said, my man. Mike in Kansas City. Go ahead, Mike. You're on KCMO.
Yeah, follow up with this other guy. He forgot to mention that Obama gave him $1.7 billion in cash in euros and Swiss francs. You remember that a few years ago? That facilitated a lot of that stuff. And all of this that we're in today is 100% failures of Jimmy Carter, because Jimmy Carter had bad advice. They pulled out the American support of the Shah, who was not a good guy to begin with anyway. These crazies went in there. And the women, especially in Iran, have suffered for the last 50 years because the Democrat Party, the party of the women, basically set up this environment for them. So, yeah, we are inserted over there. If anything, we're going to be cleaning up the mess that Jimmy Carter made 50 years ago.
Thank you, Mike. Yeah, that goes back to 2016 when the Obama administration acknowledged that it transferred $1.7 billion to Iran. Earlier in the year, that was made entirely in cash using non-U.S. currency. It was initially 400 million in euros and other foreign currency that was delivered. And then, of course, in turn, what did we get? Well, Tehran released 4 American prisoners. So that was, Obama's foreign policy. It failed miserably. And frankly, there are plenty of Republicans on board with this as well right now, with that strategy. And I can't understand why. John in Topeka, go ahead, John.
Hey, good morning, Pete. I am anti-war. I am against any war in the Middle East. But when Iran is actually asking for war, I'm not going to tell President Trump, hey, don't sit back with your boots off on the side. Put your boots on, get ready to kick somebody in the backside and let them know that we're not going to sit around and let you have the nuclear bomb. And because Israel went in and did what they're doing, and I also read in the newspapers there around October last year that Iran was suspected of popping off a test in the Sinman region, whatever, because there was a earthquake that resembled a nuclear test in that region where they have their facilities at. Well, it's close to there. It's about 50 miles off. But anyhow, the newspapers on the other side of the world said there was a nuke test that actually happened and it's suspected. So these guys going in and doing this, I'm thinking that they're really close to actually doing it, and they will follow through with the death to America. And it doesn't take them having a direct strike on America. All he's got to do is get one of those small nukes up above the United States and get an EMP, and bam, we are done for 10 years. I mean, because of the way the infrastructure is, we're not nuclear hardened. It would drop our entire grid. It would kill 100 million people in 6 months.
Yeah. John, the shocker of that call, though, is you said that you read the newspaper. Do you read a physical newspaper, or are you talking about online reading the newspaper?
Online.
Okay. All right. Just want to clarify. All right. Good work, my man. Thanks for chiming in. We appreciate that. So we were just talking and the name Barack Obama just came up. This was funny on the text line. Pete, I think we need to call Josh Hawley Barack O'Hawley. I don't know what that sounds like. It sounds like a confused Irishman, Barack O'Hawley. Sounds like a guy who's getting dragged out of the bar by his wife at 3 a.m. or something, getting kicked down the road. I don't know, but that's pretty funny because, frankly, Josh Hawley and some of these Republicans are much more in line with Barack Obama and his failed foreign policy than they are where Trump is at. And this was on the text line here. Pete, I think that many of the isolationist concerns for millennials like you and I are sitting there thinking, do you want to be 65 and lived your entire life when there hasn't been a decade when the U.S. has not been involved in some type of conflict? Well, if that happens, it's not our fault. Right? Like, now, don't get me wrong. Iraq was an awful decision and was George W. Bush's fault. Like, there's no doubt about that. But, and while you can't predict this stuff, if Trump elects in the next couple of weeks to go ahead and basically help Israel finish off Iran when it comes to their nuclear capabilities, will I view that as some type of long-term conflict that we got wrapped up in? No, I think the point of doing that, and if Trump does make that decision, the purpose will be to make it swift, to finish it quickly, and to basically take out the threat and avoid some type of larger conflict if it's just aerial in nature. I think that's the point of Trump potentially doing what he may elect to do as the commander-in-chief. To first off, protect us here in the United States, but also make sure that we don't get ourselves wrapped into some type of longer-term conflict in that part of the world. That's part of the goal here. Now, Caroline Leavitt is the White House press secretary, and she spoke yesterday at the podium about Iran and the deadline, and here's what she had to say.
When the president said a few weeks away, did he mean obtaining enough enriched uranium to start building a weapon, or did he mean Iran is a few weeks away from completing the production of a weapon?
I'm glad you asked that, Weijia. It's an important question, and it's one, frankly, the media has been getting wrong. Let's be very clear. Iran has all that it needs to achieve a nuclear weapon. All they need is a decision from the supreme leader to do that. And it would take a couple of weeks to complete the production of that weapon, which would, of course, pose an existential threat, not just to Israel, but to the United States and to the entire world. And that is something that the entire world, including countries like Russia, is in agreement with, that Iran should not and cannot obtain a nuclear weapon. And that's why the president believes that, and he's believed that, again, not just his political career, but frankly, his entire life.
And another layer of all this is that Russia and China are watching this very closely. And I think that's part of the equation here that Trump is calculating. Russia and China, obviously two of the worst actors, if not the two worst actors on the world stage, are watching what is happening right now in the Middle East and saying, what do we do? What is our next move? And what is this guy Trump going to do? If we were to acquiesce, China is going to be licking its chops and looking at Taiwan and saying, let's go, baby. It's time. They'll say neither side of the political aisle in the United States has the cojones to do what they need to do to, defend key allies around the world. That's what will happen with China. And Russia, who knows? I mean, is Putin any closer to getting to the table with Ukraine? He might be. I mean, at some point, he's just not going to have the manpower or the weaponry to do what he needs to do. And the backbone of all this, the most important thing that the administration is doing, because people are also freaking out and they're saying, oh, man, gas price is going to skyrocket. Trump having the drill, baby, drill attitude here in the United States is such a key component to this entire equation that as we're more reliant on our domestic production here in the United States and less reliant on overseas, that gives us the flexibility here in the U.S. to not worry about what these guys do with their oil and how that may impact us here in the United States.